Welcome to the second section, JavaScript for software development. And in the first section, we actually introduced you to some basic concepts in JavaScript for software development. So now we're going to be going a little bit intermediate level. So we'll just quickly test the waters and see what we can quickly do. So I want you to pick up your computer system, get ready, so we could dive into this together. Okay. Now, the last time we were just writing our code loosely. I want to introduce you to what is called a function. So I still continue with the file I created the other time. So I want to continue with what is called a function. What is actually a function? So I want to look at the function. So just think of a function as an action, right? Just the way we are taught that verb is an action word. An action. So an action could be run, could be login in this sense, could be registered, right? Could be log out, could be upload. So these are called actions. Now, some of the code that we write, we can't just write them loosely. So we have to write them and wrap them over a function. So a function is like a container for wrapping in all your code. And the most important reason why we need a function is that we'll be able to reuse that code. Just imagine you're creating a login. So anytime you need a login, you have to write, maybe you have about 20 lines of code to be able to log out, right? Or maybe to register, you have about 150 lines of code to register both validation and every other stuff. Now, at the end of the day, you want to log in, you want everybody to be click to log in, you have to rewrite that 150, or 100 lines of code. So it doesn't really, it's not efficient. So you have to wrap this in a function. So function actually makes your code reusable. Then another reason why we need a function is because when you're using a function, whatever you're doing is becoming very flexible. You can as well put in what is called parameters. You can change so many things. So for the purpose of flexibility, for the purpose of reusability, and for the purpose of organization, you need a function. So I'm just going to go back straight to what we've been doing before now. So how do we create a function? So we create a function in a very simple way. You use the keyword function. There are various ways of creating a function that break me. So this is the general way of creating a function. So you use the keyword function, then the name of the function that you want to use, then this parentheses and this curly brackets. So we're already used to this now. So our code is going to go in here, right? This is where our code will go in. And here we're going to be having what is called the parameter. So we're going to be having what is called the parameter. The parameter is just like it's just like a variable. In fact, it's a variable, but its specific, its special name in a function is called parameter. So this is how the function is going to look like. So the function name and this. So let's assume we want to create a function. Now, what after the function? After creating the function, you have to call the function. So you call the function. Then how do you call the function? Very simple. To call the function, you just use the name of the function. So if the name of the function is name, so you use that and you put a parenthesis. If it has an argument, then you can put in the argument. If it has a parameter, you put in whatever argument it is. Then you're good to go. So you just call up the method. So let's go back and create something more sensible. Let's assume we want a function that we add, we'll call sum. And this function is going to be adding two numbers together. So we're going to have num1 and num2. So those are our parameters. So as I said before now, parameters are like, are like variables. So inside this code here, we're just going to make it do a little bit of calculation. So we just create a variable and say, let this variable that I want to create, let it be called result. And we would like to say, let result is equal to num plus num2. So this is supposed to be num2. So let this is equal to num1 plus num2. And that is exactly what we want. So we can just return that. So in a function, you can do what is called a return, right? Or you can just console.log. Is that okay? So when you create whatever calculations, you can make a return, right? So we can just return that, or we can just console.log out results. Of course, you know what we're going to get when we do that. So here we go. We want to call the name of the function. Now the name of the function is called sum, no longer name. So we're just going to change this to sum. So the function is being called now. Then we have to pass in these variables. Now, this is like a variable declared. It's just like what we did before now. Now, when you want to declare the variable, for example, you assign a variable, you said num, right? Then the other one, you said num2. That's what we just did. We just declared two variables, right? And nothing is actually assigned to it. That's what this actually means. Is that okay? So we want to assign something to that now. As I said before, now we don't call it variable, we call it parameters. So this is parameter. So it could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we separate each of them with a comma. So want to assign a value to that. So to assign a value to that, the first one, let's say is 23, and the second one is called 14. Now this value we are assigning to it is called argument. When the variable is declared, we call it what? The parameters, right? And when a value is passed into it, those values passed into it are called arguments. So these are the arguments that we're passing into it. And now we have two arguments here. If you come in here and pass in just one argument, you're going to get an error. So we have two parameters here. So whatever parameters we have is what we're also going to have here. So if you have three parameters, you have also three arguments, right? And as I said, you separate each of them with a comma. So if we run that quickly, we're just going to see 37. So this add the sum of two numbers together. So this is called a function. Now, next time you want to make use of this function, you needed to add two numbers together or two numbers inputs that you're actually getting from the user. So you don't have to rewrite this code anymore. All you just need to do is to say, okay, what input am I getting from the person? We would say, okay, we are getting two inputs from the person, definitely. And the inputs are -2, right? And 13. So these are the inputs we are getting. So if you run this now, so let me just commit this and so we can just see just one result. So when you run this now, it means I'm no longer writing this code again. I'll just be reusing it like this because it has already been written. So that is one of the function. Reusability is very key in this case. So once you do that, you're able to reuse your code again and again. Okay, so I'm just going to take this up and boom. As you can see, it's 11. So when you say -2 plus 13, it's going to give you 11. Just like that. So this is called a function. Now, it's the only calculation we do with a function, not just only calculation. Every code that we've been writing before now can be in a function. Is that okay? Okay. Let's say I want to create a function that's just going to say hello to us. I'm just going to greet. And I'll say function with a keyword, right? Then we put in this parentheses. So the name of the function is greet. So it's just going to say your name. We're going to give it a variable called name, which is called an argument. And right here, what we want to happen in the code block is just for it to say your name and just say hi to you. And that is quite simple. So we can just console.log by concatenating this and say hi, then concatenate it with the name that is being entered there. And now we can then call this method. So if we call this method, the name of this method is called greet. Now, I might be using method and function interchangeably. They're actually the same, a little bit different. The method is found in a class. Then the function is actually found, is the one outside the class. That's just a simple definition. But both of them actually does the same thing. So technically they are the same. So if you see me using the word method instead of function, I'm still referring to the same stuff. So I'm calling the method here. Now, mind you, when you're calling a method, I have to make emphasis on this. You can see this is where this starts, the code block here starts, and this is where it ends. Do not call a method inside the method, right? I'm not saying that it's not possible to do that, but this is the method we are calling. Our aim is that we're creating this method. I want to call this method. So do not bring this one inside of this. So make sure you go out. Now, I'm not saying that this method cannot call other method. In fact, I'm going to demonstrate that to you after this, that this method, we can actually call this first method that we created inside this other method. So what I'm just going to do now is just to uncomment this so I don't call this one. So we just want to see just one result. Okay, it's not that all cannot run, they can all run together, but we just want to clean up the code and see just one result. So we're going to pass in the parameter. So the parameter we're expecting here now is a string. So it's the name of a person. So it's just going to be my name, Sylvester. And we'll save that. So if we go in and try to run this with our code, then you're going to see, hi, Sylvester, right? So anytime you want to make a greet, you don't have to necessarily write all this code. Now, we're just writing 2 lines, 3 lines of code, or 4 lines of code. Just for the sake of example, when we go fully into the backend development, you see that you can actually have up to 150 lines of code, 200 lines of code, so you don't have to repeat them again. Is that okay? So here we go, we have been able to create 2 functions, 2 very simple functions, and we're able to call them. So I was about making emphasis on something the other time. So I was saying that you can actually call this method. This method has been created, not called, right? I can call this method inside of this method. So how do I do that? Very simple. This is another code block. I can just put in the method. The method is called a sum, right? So I just put a sum, whatever number I want, 12 and 12. I just put that. So what it's going to do is that it's going to first console.log hi. If I call this one, I put in this my parameter, it's going to console. Then it's calling this other method again. You can see I'm calling a method in a method. So you can actually do that. You can actually do that. For example, you're creating a game as the case may be, and in that game, you've created the jump function. So you want a situation whereby when you click on the button, it jumps. And when it jumps, there's a certain sound that you have actually brought in, some sound and some effects that you want it to do. So that effect must have been wrapped in a function. So you just call in that function and everything runs together. So that is it. So let's quickly run this now and see how it goes. So when we look at this, we can get this. You can see hi Sylvester and it's giving us 24. So it's calling out the second method here. Now, this is a general way of creating the method. Now we have the ES6 way of creating this method. Exactly the same thing. In other words, I'm just going to take this one off just for us to clean up this page. And as I said before, now make sure that you are able to, you can pause the video. Don't move at the same pace with me. Pause the video, understand it, run your code, then before you can take it off and say, okay, you understand that and move on. Okay, or better still, you can even create different files for different versions. So it's okay and fantastic. So let's quickly just look at this. So this same thing I created here, I can create it in another way. Is that okay? That's called the ES6 way of creating. Yeah, and it's just like a modern way of writing our JavaScript. So we write JavaScript in some certain modern, nice way. So let's look at this quickly. So we want to look at that same function. We can do it like this and say let. It can be let, it can be const. As if we don't intend to change anything about the name. So I'm just going to be using let, but I don't know what the future will hold. So I'm just going to say name, let name, right, equal to, then I'll put this bracket. Can you see that? So now, here I'm going to put what is called the arrow bracket, like this and like this, before the curly braces. This is the structure. So what have we done? This represents this whole stuff you have in here. And these curly braces represent this. So the only difference is just this. And this is why they call it the arrow function. So it got its name from here, called the arrow function. Just the way I did that. Exactly what I did here, I can also do it here. And it's just going to run exactly the same way. It's just a second and a different way of creating the code. So I can just pick up everything we have in here and put it here also as well. And the code is just going to run. So let me take this off. So these two are actually the same. So this is it. I've just created a method, so I just have to take this one off. There's a typo here. So this is where the parameters will be, and this is where the code will run. So this arrow is what makes it called, it's called what arrow function. So that is it. That is exactly what we're trying to create. Okay, as you can see, there's one unneeded stuff here. So we take it off. Then it's time for us to call the method. So to call the method, we just use name. That's the name of the method. And I'll put in whatever I want to put, maybe 12 or 13. I think that method is supposed to be called sum, not name. So let's change it to sum. So it's just going to add the two together and boom, we are good to go. Now the name you give it does not really matter. Now, just as I said before, now naming convention, if I want to say sum of two numbers, I can say sum of two numbers. So we are applying what we learned before, which is camel casing. So you can make your method as long as this, but just make sure you use the camel casing or the camel casing as the case will be. So in this case, we're going to be having sum of two. You can just take this off and just put that in here. So it's exactly the same. So it doesn't matter the name you actually used. So that is called a function, right? So we are wrapping our code in a function. Now, this concept of function is what we're going to be using most times in developing our application. Whatever application we're going to be developing from now on, we're going to be using that. But before then, we're just going to take a very simple code challenge. So in this simple code challenge, what we're trying to do is that we want to calculate the points by a football team. So let's just take this out. So for those that watch football, if a team plays a match, if there is a win, then you're going to award them 3 points. And if there is a draw, they're going to award them 0 points, right? Sorry, draw 1 point. And if there is a loss, you're going to be awarded just 1 point, right? I'm talking of football game or soccer, as the case may be in all the part of the world. So this is 1, right? 1 point. So we want a situation whereby we want to be able to calculate the number of points accumulated by a certain team. And that is what we actually want to do. We want to be able to calculate that to know the number of points. So here is a serial table that shows number of matches played this season. And here is for Inter. And as you can see, Inter have 58 points, as the case may be. So we just want to calculate the points for Inter. So based on what we're seeing is that Inter has 17 draws, 17 wins, 7 draws, and 3 losses. So this calculation was done. Is that okay? And they got 58. So that is what we want to do. We want to confirm if we can get 58. Why we use this parameter of Inter having 17 points and sorry, having 17 wins, seven draws, and 3 losses. That is quickly what we want to do. We want to test that out. So let's try that quickly and go back to our code. So to write that, we're just going to call the function. I will say I'll call it points. I'll select points. So I'm going to be using the arrow function. Uh, Personally, that's actually my favorite. Okay, so we're going to be using the arrow function. So we're going to calculate the total. So let's just call this total. As we said before now, in a football match, a win is going to be 3 points. Is that okay? So if we get a win, so we're going to take 3 parameters here. That's what we're expecting. So it's either going to be a win, a draw, or a loss, right? So we can go on and do the calculations here. So we can say win. So the number of win multiplied by 3. So that's what we're going to do. So the number of win multiplied by 3. And then whatever result that we get, we're going to add it to, you can put your brackets if you want this to, kind of be very readable. And you don't want any form of, you want it to follow like a board mask kind of rule. You can do all that and you can still leave it. It's not compulsory. So that's for the win. Then for the draw, similarly, for the draw, you're going to have draw multiplied by 1 because the draw is just 1 point. So draw multiplied by 1. And as I said before now, you can put it in a bracket if you wish to. Then the next one is a loss. Now, we all know that a loss is going to be 0 multiplied by loss. And we know that anything multiplied by loss is actually 0. So we can choose to just stop here, right? And not do any other thing. And if you just want to play around, you can also include it and say loss, right? Loss multiplied by 0. So basic maths, anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So even if it is 5 multiplied by 0 is 0. And if you're adding 0 to a certain number, it's just useless, right? So it doesn't really have any meaning. So we're just writing this just for the sake of understanding. And you can decide to stop here and neglect this one, right? So this is what we are creating. So this is what we're writing. So that is just a major calculation, right? So this is the total number of points that we're going to get. So I just want to concatenate it. Since we have total here, I would like to do a concatenation and just say total points. I'll do a concatenation here. So let's just say total points. So it could be readable. Total points. We'll just put this one and say equal to this. So we can just do that, or you can put this personal preference, whatever stuff you want to do. So this is not involving the calculation. This is just concatenation. You concatenate it with a string. This is the major thing that we actually want. So we just want to print this out. So of course, we're going to return this, or we're going to, console.log this out. So console.log, and the value is total. So we have that total points. Total. So that's all we need to do. Then the next thing is just for us to call the method, calling the function. So we call the function. So the name of the function is called points. So we call that, and we pass in our parentheses. How many parentheses, how many parameters do we have? Sorry, we pass in our parameters. So we have 3 parameters. We're going to pass in 3 arguments as well. So that's where we go into what we saw the other time. So we said there are 17 wins, right? We have 17 wins, 17 draw, and 3 losses. Okay. 17 wins, 7 draws, and 3 losses. So we want to calculate and see, because according to what we saw here was that the total was equal to what? 58. So let's see if we are going to be getting 58. So let's quickly run this. Very simple, just to apply what we've just done. You can see the total number of points is 1570. Okay. Somebody can just come to the comment and tell me what I've done wrong. Yeah, okay. Something has been, it's not working properly the way it's supposed to work. So we said a win multiplied by 3, a draw multiplied by 1, then a loss multiplied by 0. And what else did I do? I said console.log, and this is a method. And we are calling this method, and it's telling us the total point is this. Okay, I think I'm going to take this one off, right? This is what I would do. I'll take this one off, this string. I don't think I will need you for now. So it doesn't see every other stuff as a string. So I'm just going to save that and quickly use. I can still bring in that in later, so we can see that we're getting 58. So that's not a big deal. I can just bring that here and say total points. Right. Oh, sorry. So I can bring that in here and say total points, and concatenate it with the total. And here we go, we already have 58. It shows that the program is working well. So the total point is what? 58. So let's try for another thing. Let's try for Napoli. 17, 6, and 4. Okay, 17 win, 6 draw, and 4 losses. So let's try for Napoli, save it, and let's see if we're going to get the same point in Napoli. Here we go, 57. And let's try for Atalanta, Ademola Lookman's club. 16, 17, and 4. So let's quickly do that. 16, 17. Oh, I think that's 7. 16, 7, and 4. So 16, 7, and 4. So let's try that and see if we'll get the same points. And that is going to give us 55. As you can see, we're getting 55 in here. Right? So I know something must have been coming to your mind, That doesn't mean this is what they actually used and the developer actually used in calculating this. Yes, exactly what they used behind the scenes. So it is called what? Function. You could see I don't necessarily have to start calculating for Napoli, calculate. So even if I calculate from bottom to bottom to the last team Monza, I can calculate, I'm still going to get the same thing. So I don't have to calculate for the whole 20 teams. So this is the function. This is one of the the usefulness of a function, reusability. So it makes it very much more reusable. So we're going to be ending this section with this section of function. So, okay, now the next concept we're about to learn is called iteration, which is popularly known as loop. Okay, right there in our primary school, those days, when you disturb in a class, or maybe you're kind of not in class, your teacher will want to give you, a kind of punishment, and they will ask you to write, I'm not going to do this again. I'm going to be a good boy from now. I'm going to be a good boy from now. They will ask you to write this on, like 5 leaves of your notes. And each line is about 20 lines. You know what that means? About 120 times you're writing that line. That I'm going to be a good boy from now. I'm going to be a good boy from now. I'm going to be a good boy from now. You can see that. So that's a punishment. And one of the things that the computers actually knows how to do best, and far, far better than human, is its ability to repeat a particular task without making a mistake. I have been writing code for several years now, for some years now. At least I'm well experienced, but I still make mistakes when writing code, right? Even the program that I've written several times, sometimes I want to write it, I'm still going to make some kind of mistake. That's what makes me human, right? But the computer system is very, very smart in this regard. So they actually know what to do. They don't make mistake in repetitive tasks. So let's assume we want to repeat a particular thing more than once, or a particular function more than once, or a particular action more than once. You're going to put it in a loop. So how do we create a loop? So to create a loop, we have what is called the for loop. There are different types of loop. There is a for, there is a while loop, there is a for in loop, there's a for each loop. Those ones are specially for arrays, but the general one is just going to be for loop and while loop. We have for each loop, there are several loops, right? In fact, you can even map. There's map. Map is a function, and it's also regarded as a loop, right? We have some functions like the for each. It's also a function, but it's regarded as a loop. Is that okay? So we're just going to be using the basic one, which is the for loop. Is that okay? And when we start dealing with arrays, we're going to be learning others as well. So the for loop, what do we come up with a for loop? So for that case where the teacher is asking me to write, I'm going to be a good boy from now, maybe 120 times, I can make that very easy. So I'm just going to create a for loop. So this is the structure for and this skeleton. You guess right. It looks like that of if function and that of the function itself or method itself. It's quite simple. So here is going to be the condition. I'm going to be writing the condition here. So I'm going to start my count. I'm going to create a variable, say let the count that I want to start counting from, let count, right, equal to 1. I want to start counting from 1. Is that okay? That's where I want to start counting from. Then put a comma. This is a statement. Is that okay inside this condition? So I want to create something. So I'm going to say, then the count should be less than or equal to 5, which means that, okay, let me say less than or equal to 120, right? Which means that I want to start counting from 1 to 120, right? Then how do I want it to increment? Do I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I should be counting 2, 4, 6, 8. I should count 3, 4, 3, 6. In what multiples do I want to count it? That's called the step. That's the last one that is going to be here. It's called step. The first one is a variable I declared. The second is the limit where it's going to end. And the third one here is the step, how I want it to progress. Is it by 1, by 2, or by 3? So if I want it to progress by 1, I'm just going to say I plus plus. Is that okay? I'm going to say that. Now this I plus plus is also the same as I equal to Oh, sorry, I'm not using I. Many people are so used to I. So I'm going to say count plus plus. So this count plus plus means that increment the count by 1, right? And if I want to increment it by this same thing that I've written can also be written in a short, in a long form like count, right? Count plus 1 is the same thing. So it's either you choose to write it like the first one, or you write it this way. This is the long hand, or you write it the short hand, which is count plus plus, right? Is that okay? So that is just to tell you that you want to increase it by 1. So how do we go about this? So we can just console.log. We just want to console.log at the numbers we're trying to look through with the count itself, because count has been declared to be what? 1. So we are counting now. So we just print out count. So the next thing we will do is to run this. That is all we needed to do. So let's check out this code now. So if we come down here and run our code, we're going to see it's going to start counting from 1 to 120. Here we've already gotten to 120. So just imagine this is where it started from. And it started counting from 120 for 120 something and so on and so forth. Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. Can you see that? Okay, this is it. And this can be used maliciously. For example, you're working as a freelancer and the person refused to pay you after you deliver the job. So you must have written something very similar to this to create lots of folders. I think that's a tip for you guys, developers. To be creating folder, anytime you write the code, it creates more folder. The more folder it creates and the more files, it creates files and create more folders. The more it's created, the more your system is memory is used up, and your system will get frozen and even crash at the same time. So you might have issues with your hard disk. So that's just by the way anyway. So I'm not saying that you should use it maliciously. You can actually use it for just to protect yourself as well. So let's move on quickly. So we have 117 down to 120. So it means that it counted from 1 to this. What if I want the step to be 2? Some of you say, okay, if I want the step to be 2, I should just do plus 2. This is what I should do. If I do this, and definitely it's just going to take me to plus 2. That's a lie. It's not going to work that way. I'm going to say count, right, plus 2. So that's a way I would do it, and it's going to be incrementing by 2. And this time I just want it to end at 20. I don't want it to go too far. So if you run this code now, let's say this code and run it again. So we're going to see this. You can see it's counting from, oh, I think that was a mistake from me. Did I save? Okay, 913. Yes, it's counting actually. So it counts from 1 to 1, then 3, 5, and that is what we're getting. 5, 7. Can you see that? So it will start counting from 1, 3, 5, 7. Yeah, that is it. So we're seeing the previous one. So 1, 3, 5, 7. So if you want it to start from 2, you can also indicate that you want it to start from 2, right? And it's going to just do 2, 4, 6, 8, and boom, whatever way that you want it. So you can do it that way, and you run it again. You're just going to see your result this way. So it all depends on what you want. Now, this same thing can be done in several ways, as I said. So we can decide to put it this way. Now, there is a shortcut for this instead of that long cut. You can say plus equal to. You can say equal to, equal to, then plus. Is that okay? Then plus 2. So you want to increment it. Is that okay? You can do this. And if you do this, it's just going to increment it. Oh, sorry. I think it's plot equal to 2. So you can do this. So it's going to increment it by 2. So let's try to run this quickly. It's a shortcut, short way of doing it. So as you can see, it's still running exactly the same way it ran the other time. And if you want it like 3, you can do this also, right? This is a shortcut also of doing when it is just not 1. So you can do whatever you want to do with it. It's all left for you. So to actually do whatever you want to do. So right now we want to make our count to be, to be 1, and want it to stop at 20. We only want it to increment by 1. So we say plus plus. right? So we want to increment by 1. That's all we want to do. So, and in this case, it's printing out the numbers, but we don't want it to print out the counts. We want it to print out what the teacher asked us to write. But it's just said we should write, I'm going to be a good boy from now. So we should write it 120 times. So imagine that. So I'm going to just put in here, I am going to be a good boy. From now on, right? So once you've written that, boom, you're good to go. So it means that you've just said that thing 20 times. So if you look at it now, you're just going to say, I'm going to be a good boy from now on. I'm going to be a good boy from now on. I'm going to be a good boy from now on. 120, that's 20 times. If you want 120 times, you can include that. 200 times, you can include it. So you're just going to do it as many times as possible as you want it to do. So it's able to do that repetitive task. This is what actually makes it different and very much more efficient for what this is why the system, computer system, the programs are a little bit more efficient. They are humans. So let's try something else quickly. So we've talked about the for loop, right? So let's quickly talk about the while loop. The while loop is also very simple. The while loop just talk about a condition. You say why, you can guess it just like this. So why something is this, you should do this. For example, you can say why my name. I'm just going to put as a condition here. I'll say, okay, name, all right, or age is equal to 12, right? That's the age. Or I'm just going to say 18, right? So I want a particular loop to continue and I don't want it to stop. That is, for example, as far as someone is 18, is that okay? They should be able to, cast their votes. They should be able to cast their votes. So that's what you just want. So you want this to be continuous. So someone cannot be 18 this year and tomorrow the person will be 17, right? So if you're 18, it's continuous, right? So you want it to just continuously be doing that. Now, in a case where we also need this is, for example, when you log into a particular website and you want to actually read the website, people are logging into the website, or you want to actually continuously print out all the things that you have, the data you have on the database on the website. So you can quickly use this while loop. So let's quickly just use this while. You can see while age, right, is less than, while age is greater than 17. So while age is greater than 17, you can just run this code and just say console.log. You see, it's not going to stop. So it's just going to be continuous. So why this is greater than 17, age is greater than 17, then we should just say you are eligible to vote. And that is all. So you can continue writing this. It's just going to continue to write this. So can you see this? You're eligible to vote, you're eligible to vote, you're eligible to vote, you're eligible to vote, you're eligible to vote. Keep on running, keep on running, keep on running, keep on running. As far as the age is what is equal to, is greater than 17. So this age now is 18. So this is just going to continue to run. Is that okay? So this is the part of the for loop that I would like to introduce you to. So this section is mainly on the loop. So I hope you understand all that I've taught you in this section. We're going to move to another section quickly, and I will introduce you to another concept. I hope to see you in the next class. Bye for now.